We've got a really full agenda today. I'm Cynthia Perkins, and I'm going to kind of moderate our meeting and help us get through all the agenda items and hopefully hear from people when you want to speak and kind of capture people's thoughts and insights as we go through our meeting. This is the fall series, and we've been working on energy transition during the climate crisis. And for those of you who are new to us, the King's Chapel Environment Action Initiative is a group out of our church, and our goal is to provide spiritual sustenance, information, camaraderie, and opportunities for action. And this is all in the face of what we're seeing as real climate emergency, that trying to wake people up all around us, you know, through our church community, our local communities, and everywhere we can. So you heard the bell ringing. You heard the bell ringing as you came on. That's our Paul Revere and Sons bell. And we ring that bell on the 11th day of the month for 11 minutes. Is that right? 11th day, 11 minutes at 11 o'clock. And we do that to alert people and just shout out that it's the 11th hour in our climate change action that needs to be taken. And basically, I think we have a picture here. We actually had 11 people in November, the 11th month. So we really had a theme going. And it was very, very exciting to talk to people as they were walking by. There was a team up in the belfry pulling on the big rope, and you know, someone said that it really did alert people on the street. So people were saying, well, what is this all about? We had a great energy there. And we thank Sylvia Soderberg for coordinating and organizing us. And we have there are other churches. First Church in Boston is participating. There are churches out in the suburbs now that are participating as well. So this whole idea is really catching on. We'd love for any of you to join us on December 11th at 11 o'clock, actually 10:45 to get all set up. And you can let Sylvia know or connect through our Environmental Action website. So we are being recorded. I just wanted to let everyone know, and you might want to put yourself on mute until it's time to speak. And we're going to focus today on action steps. We've had 2 sessions on these big environmental issues and what's being done in the legislature and what's being done locally on Beacon Hill and around Boston. And today we want to focus on taking what we've learned and kind of putting together an action plan and actually doing something about climate change. So that is what we're up for. Here's the agenda today. In a minute, we're going to hear from Julie Hyde, and we hope to cover all these items today. So Julie is going to start us out. She is a lifelong member of King's Chapel, and she practices organic gardening at home, and she's a great follower and supporter of the work of Joanna Macy. And she's also an active member of a global environmental organization called Pachamama. And we always love to hear what Julie has to offer.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. I actually thought about writing a poem to open this wonderful meeting, or a prayer, and I was second guess myself because Joy and David are both so miraculous at preparing prayers for special moments. But I decided instead to just make this a brief and loving blessing for this group, a blessing for this company present of friends old and new. We are teachers, learners, and doers learning, doing, and helping each other be stronger together. Amen.
Amen, Julie. Thank you so much. Julie, your ceiling is lovely. That's what we're seeing.
No, I can't seem to change it. I'll probably come back in a moment, but I don't know what happened.
You are even more fun to look at. So if you want to switch it off, we're going to hear from Dory. This is like one of the big events that we've been working on. We heard a lot about the future of heat in our last meeting. Dory CV is the treasurer of King's Chapel and a founding member of the Environmental Action Initiative. And she is the author of this recent report, the GSEP at the 6-year mark, a review of the Massachusetts Gas System Enhancement Program. And this report really kind of created some waves in Boston. The Boston Globe covered it for many issues. And this report is a catalyst for new legislative proposals. So thank you, Dory, for all the work you've done on this. And once again, we're asking you for a summary and some action items suggested that we can take.
Very good. No, I'm so pleased to be here. I love this group so much. And, you know, there's so much to do and so many ways to be active. But I'm going to, as the slide says here, drill down on the future of heat, which Betsy and I have touched on in prior meetings. But I want to go a little bit deeper. It's a piece of legislation that will be coming up, hopefully for a vote before this session ends in July of 2022. So next slide. We, of course, need to start with where my reports ended up, which is the current situation regarding natural gas in the Commonwealth, which is that if nothing changes, if we continue with business as usual, we're on a course to become even more deeply tied to our natural gas infrastructure. The report that I wrote showed that a good 1.5 to 3% of gas company revenues in the Commonwealth is going to finance capital investment in replacing infrastructure, and that 1.5 to 3% translates into about $600 million per year. And if this program is allowed to continue, it's on the course to be the biggest, most expensive infrastructure replacement project ever in the Commonwealth, topping the cost of the big dig. So that's what we're on course for if we don't make any changes. Next slide. This is a map of all the sites that are going to have pipe replacement in the next 5 years. So again, this is the status quo. This is what we're the course that we're on. Next slide. The Future of Heat Act is a really interesting piece of legislation. It doesn't make the gas companies do anything, but it offers some ways for them to change what they're doing. There's no way that we can achieve our 2050 net zero goals if we continue with the business as usual. So this legislation tackles the challenge of how can we incentivize public utilities which have a public interest and they're responsible for the public good? How can we offer them a path to pilot and bring to scale methods of delivering non-emitting, renewable thermal energy to heat and cool our homes and businesses? So the Future of Heat Act does this in 4 ways, and I have just the 4 bullets here, so I'm just going to run through them quickly. First, and it addresses many of the problems that I identified in my GSEP report. First, it ends GSEP's perverse incentive to replace pipes and not repair them. So under the current law, gas companies are incentivized to replace aging, leaking, hazardous pipeline infrastructure. The Future of Heat Act would expand the use of GSEP funds so that they're incentivized to extend the life of a leak-prone pipe using the latest in pipe repair technology in order to avoid the more costly replacement of the gas pipeline. The second thing it does is it aligns the depreciation of new gas pipes with net zero 2050. So basically what it says is if you're going to install a gas pipe after 2050, you can't collect any money on it. So it ends cost recovery as of 2050, unless that new infrastructure has the capacity to deliver thermal heat from renewable sources. So this puts a strict limit on gas companies' use of capital asset depreciation to recover their costs for installing new gas pipes. The third thing it does is incentivize gas companies to evolve their business models to sell renewable, non-emitting thermal energy. So under the current law, gas companies are only permitted to sell gas, and they're not permitted to spend ratepayer funds on innovation. So the Future of Heat Act instead allows gas companies to sell non-emitting renewable energy to heat and cool our homes, using their existing rights of way in municipalities. The act also would allow GSEP to be used to replace the infrastructure we have with again, non-emitting renewable thermal infrastructure instead of gas pipelines. The last thing that it does is it allows GSEP to issue lower cost securitized bonds that are backed up by you and I, the ratepayers, to help fund the energy transition, particularly for lower income households and for labor. So it authorizes gas companies to issue these special bonds, which have the impact of reducing the cost of installing the new infrastructure. And then it allows GSEP to accumulate sort of a savings account from these lower cost bonds that in turn can be allocated to retrofitting the homes of lower income ratepayers and also for retraining gas workers. So that's kind of a just transition set of motives. I didn't put the bullet for this, but I know a lot of us at King's Chapel in this group talk about how screwed up the Mass Save program is. So the Future of Heat Act would require Mass Save to fund non-emitting renewable energy programs, including heat pumps, and it would require the DPU, the Department of Public Utilities, to consider the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions when it's approving Mass Save programs. So the Act itself does a lot more things than what I've summarized here, but for me, these are the big ones. And there are some clear action steps that folks can take on this front to contact their legislators and push this legislation forward. And I believe Kent will be talking about that further. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory.
I think there's one more slide that just shows the environmental. Oh, okay, good. No, I didn't leave out anything.
No, you cut it way down.
Okay, cool.
All right.
I'm learning.
Very good. Thank you, Dory.
Super good summary.
Yeah, that is a very good summary. We've actually got a minute or two if there is a question.
I have one.
Does anyone have a question or a comment? Joy. Oh, and Becky, I see.
I've just been looking up, let's see, what's it called? Renewable, non-emitting thermal energy.
Yeah.
Just so I know what that is. Is it
Well,
geothermal? What else is it?
Geothermal is a type of energy. I mean, gas in some sense is a thermal energy. I mean, I always struggle with this definition too, but thermal essentially means heat. Actually, Dick Perkins probably could answer this better than I can. But I think, well, hey, Dick, can you speak up? Do you consider gas a type of thermal energy, and therefore it's important to say that it's not emitting emissions and it's from renewable sources? I don't know if Dick wants.
I'm afraid I don't quite understand what the issue is there. It seems like, you know, gas is a fossil fuel, so forth and so on. Thermal energy has to come from somewhere. It either comes from drilling into the earth or from using a fossil fuel or some other fuel to create heat.
We were more asking, what's the definition of the word thermal? And to me, it means,
Just heat, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he,
But
So
I-
geothermal is an example of non-emitting renewable, and geothermal is when you drill down into the earth, but not that far, a couple 100 feet maximum, and you install a water pipe, and you circulate water, which is warmed by the core, not the core of the earth, but just by a few 100 feet down. And the contrast between the ambient temperature and the temperature of that circulating water then can be used to create the energy that then can power a heat pump.
And it
And
does
there's-
seem as though there's a lot of confusion because geothermal energy in the past has meant where the Earth's core is near the surface, and like in the Big Island of Hawaii and so forth, where you drill down a very short ways and you get superheated conditions. And so most of the people that say geothermal are really referring to that, using the Earth's core for it.
Yeah, can I just say we'll have a link to more information about what is being talked about for Massachusetts, which is not that.
Yeah,
And
good.
we'll provide some links to that. But Mothers Out Front and Gas Leaks Allies have some good information on that.
good, thanks. Now Becky had a hand up around the
Oh,
corner.
yeah, I have a question. I understand where this net zero by 2050 deadline date comes from. I'm just wondering, that seems, very generous to allow this ramped up replacement of pipes to go forward. I'm wondering, isn't there just going to be a mad rush to do this as fast as possible to get in under that deadline? Is there anything we can do about that? It reminds me of maybe, I don't know if this is analogous or not, but whenever there are new gun restrictions that are discussed, all of a sudden there's a mad rush for people to purchase weapons ahead of the restrictions. So it seems to give a lot of time for these gas companies to replace pipes, to me. But I'm not sure there's really anything to be done about that.
Well, that's a good segue for me, I think, Cynthia.
Very good. All right, Becky, we
So,
hope we'll get the question. We've got a next slide.
What your question, Becky, really highlights the fact that this is a really important moment in time for the public to speak up. And there are 4 audiences for us to address. One is each other and the public at large. The bell ringing is doing that, and Mothers Out Front has been doing that in various ways. One of them is the gas companies themselves. One of them is the legislature, and one is the executive branch. And there are probably others, but just to keep things in that context. Mothers Out Front has been working particularly on the public and on the gas companies this fall. They've chosen as the refrain, clean heat, clean air. That many of you on this call signed this postcard that I'm wearing, which tells the gas companies that we want good solutions for heating in our future. They're considering things like hydrogen, which is still a fossil fuel and very explosive, as a way to heat our homes. It's a terrible idea, and there's some good ideas out there like geothermal. So Mothers Out Front had this big project to get postcards. There were more than 3,000 postcards delivered to the chairman of Berkshire Gas and National Grid and Eversource. They did it by staging a relay all the way from Pittsfield, where Berkshire Gas is, to Waltham, where National Grid is, and Eversource at the Prudential Center. And so some of us appeared at the State House to do our own immediate demonstration. And I was one of probably 100 or more people who were at the Prudential building when the materials were delivered to Eversource. Eversource didn't let them in the building, but both the CEOs of Eversource and of National Grid called the very next day to ask for meetings with representatives from Mothers Out Front. So there was publicity. And one of the things that's an alien world to me, but
social media is part of what does the trick. People on the relay were tweeting all the time, and apparently that resulted in 230,000 different tweets going to the gas companies and other people, and it's that kind of publicity that makes them pay attention. I want to mention, I think, as somebody said about the postcards, every postcard that somebody signed represents a conversation about the natural gas issues and what's ahead of us and why it's important to take action now. So the next step between now and the end of December, Mothers Out Front is hoping to get many, many petitions, many signatures on its petition for clean heat. And the link is going to be available to you somehow. I'm not quite sure how. So that's the big project for the next fall, and I hope for the next month or so. The legislative front is really important because especially this future of heat bill, but the legislature has gone on break, and the holidays are coming. So that action is really going to happen more in January, that there will be opportunities to combine with other people to speak to your legislators. But in the meantime, you should get prepared by finding out, if you don't already know, who is your state rep, who is your state senator, what are they doing about climate action? So that's the legislative front, and Mothers Out Front has identified several bills that are very relevant to clean heat and clean air issues, but the most important of them all is, and there's the slide. I wasn't sure the slide was going to come up. In any case, we'll give you more information about that when the time for action comes in January. January will be busy because the committee chairs and the legislature have to decide whether to forward an action, to move a bill out of their committee and on to action by the legislature, or just let it die or wait. So I think that's all I have to say for now, but there is a sample letter. What Mothers Out Front also has these monthly things they call an action hour. It's just 45 minutes when they suggest a prepared course of action, and you get briefed on whatever the latest information is. And then they give you something like this, a document that they urge you to send to 5 of your friends, asking them to sign the petition and learn more, in this case, about heat pumps and geogrids. So the executive action is not a particular focus for Mothers Out Front at the moment, but Kent will give some examples of a context in which that's important. It will be important in the gas front because all the gas companies have to tell they have to report to the Department of Public Utilities by this coming March what their plans are. And that's one of the reasons that our public voicing of opinions and priorities is so important right now.
Well, thank you.
Maybe I should, can I just jump in here for a second, Betsy, because the previous question about what are referred to as geogrids, there's going to be a link right here, and we'll supply that. But you can see the last link in this letter has more information about geogrids, which are basically water linkages among some local group of buildings that also have a link to a source underground.
Kind of neighborhood scale, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are some in place in Boston already. Apparently Trinity Church has geothermal heating of some kind. It's not a grid, but at least it's an example. So sum it up, the immediate actions are to sign the petition if you haven't already. If you're not sure whether you've signed it, you can sign it because they apparently have some kind of software that will prevent duplicate counting. And then the other thing is to get ready to take action with your legislators in January.
Betsy, are the sponsors the same as the people who wrote this bill? They're like
No, and actually, I wish I knew more about the process, but one of the, Dory may know more than I do. These bills have been, the future of heat bill has been very carefully developed by people, including representatives from the Gas Leaks Alliance. In other words, members of the public, and not just
legislators
aren't writing the bills.
Right. And Senator Barrett has been very involved, hasn't he?
He's the chair of TUE, which is Technology, Utilities, and Energy.
Right. But my understanding is that every co-sponsor helps. So you want as many as you can get.
So the push for Mothers Out Front has been to try to urge the chapters to get their legislators to be co-sponsors, because that's one of the big things that helps to get out of committee and therefore available for action soon. And given all these immediate issues with GSEP and the crazy plan that's in place now, it would be a tragedy if the future of Beat Bill dies in committee.
So what we can do is send these letters and contact our own representatives, and there will be links and ways we can do that. It's very, very easy to click on the link to send this letter and have your name recorded as supporting the petition. And so I encourage everyone to do that. I didn't introduce Betsy. She kind of snuck in here, but she is, I have notes. she is a resident of Beacon Hill, an author, and an active member of King's Chapel leadership, and the first woman dean at Yale University. So
Yale College.
College. Oh, what, Yale College. All right, Yale College. There we go. Thank you so much, Betsy.
Let me explain this picture. This was the downtown chapter's little art street theater, which is methane gas handing over the baton for the relay race with the postcards to a box, which is really a heat pump.
Great.
This is great. I love it. It's so colorful, and it's just really makes a great point. And you see all these women out there.
Jay Livingstone spoke, Representative Livingstone, and also Kenzie Bach, councilwoman for the city of Boston.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Betsy. Next we have Kent Wittenberg, who wrote he is a retired technology researcher, a poet, the former chair of adult religious education and still very involved in religious education, and a founding member of the Environmental Action Initiative at King's Chapel. And we have much to thank Kent for pulling all these slides together and getting us here and timing us. And take it away, Kent, because you have done some really important work and want us to wake up to this Peabody Peaker plant.
All right. Well, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about a very related issue in the state, which somehow has been flying under the radar. And it's really timely and important. So let me give you the basic summary. There is a first point is that your tax dollars are adding not only existing, but new fossil fuel emissions. As we speak, there's a star there, which is unless we do something about it. So maybe you didn't know this, but there's a new power plant being planned for Peabody, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. So I've borrowed a few slides here from an organization called Breathe Clean North Shore, which is one of the environmental organizations that have been trying to do something about this plan, oppose it basically. So here's a little background. This tells you how big the plant is. What a peaker plant is that a power plant that doesn't run continuously, but runs when there's a peak in demand. So it runs when that peak happens and not all the time. So this plant is scheduled to start construction in the spring. It's got a total of $170 million of taxpayer money. Actually, yeah, 170 million to do the financing for it. And it's going to include a natural gas compressor as well as some expansion of oil infrastructure. And this thing was called, it's been kind of named 2015A special project, and in a process that actually began in 2015. And it was never actually brought to the public's attention or subject to any sort of public review until a few months ago. So one of the big aspects of this proposal is that it's located in an environmental justice community, and it's very close to many other environmental justice communities. And you can see the map here. This is basically near the Danvers Peabody border on the North Shore. And that site already has 68 megawatts of gas and oil peaking power that exists. And the cumulative impact has not been evaluated. So this plant is projected by some analysts to emit up to 51,000 tons of CO2 a year, which amounts to, I don't have my notes in front of me, but the many cars, additional cars on the road. The organization that's building it, or they hope to build it, is the Massachusetts Municipal Wholesale Electric Company. And what they do is they sell this power to municipal companies who sign a contract to take power when they need it from this organization. So as I said, despite only very limited engagement with the community, this process was approved to move forward. And there was a meeting in Peabody, I think it was in June or beginning of July, that was the first public hearing that happened. There were about a couple of hundred people that commented, none of whom supported the project, but that was completely ignored and the project moved forward.
Tell them about how long they spoke. There was no time.
Yeah, there was some other things that happened. The company spoke for 2 hours before any of the community was allowed to speak. A lot of the people had left at that point. But there's obviously the train is moving fast, and they're trying to get it kind of to happen before many people even know about it, actually. So this organization and some others are trying. So at this point, the financing has been approved. However, there has not been any sort of environmental review of the project somehow, and there has not been a community health impact assessment as well. And there's an organization in the state that's part of the Mass Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs called MEPA, the Mass Environmental Policy Act Office, and they are charged with calling hearings and doing environmental impact studies and community health studies, which need to be done here and that simply haven't been done. So the only hope at this point that I know of for stopping this project is to persuade the governor and this state office to actually halt the process to do an environmental impact study and a community health study. So that's what the main action is for the organizations that are trying to stop this at this point. I think it's not even, perhaps not needing to be said, but to build an additional fossil fuel plant when we're trying to reduce the fossil fuel emissions in this state to net zero by 2050, it makes no sense at all. And in fact, there's been a study showing that alternatives are cheaper and better, alternatives involving battery storage, and we can get you a link to that too. So this is a time to take action, I think, on all these things, but particularly on this Peabody power plant, if we're going to have any hope to slow things down. So at this point, what we want to move to is a checklist. You know, we all three of us have been talking about various things we might do, but we're going to try and get everything put into a simple checklist. And I'm going to show you where that stands right at this second. So we're constructing a checklist which has items to do to support the future of heat legislation that you heard Dory talk about, to support the advocacy of Mothers Out Front that you heard Betsy talk about. And it includes things like contacting, first of all, learning about the issues if you don't know about them already, and then checking what your legislators, where they stand, whether they're co-sponsoring the bill, in the case of the future of heat legislation, and some letters you could send to friends, and, encouraging them to also take action and learn more about the issue. So for the Mothers Out Front, similarly, as Betsy mentioned, one thing is to get to know your local chapter. send a message to the CEOs of the gas utilities by signing a petition. And we have a link to this petition. And as Cynthia points out, it's very simple. You just fill out your name and your email, press click, and your name will be added to the petition. And then for the Peabody plant, there's a link to this very helpful toolkit that we'll supply here for detailed instructions on all these other actions I mentioned here. The Secretary of the Environmental Office for Energy and Environmental Affairs is Katie Theoharidis, and there's a movement to try and both tag them on social media if you're able to do that. Most of us may not be so involved with social media, but I think, as Betsy said, that tends to be a pretty effective way of getting the message across. There's another petition here, if you haven't signed it yet. Again, it's very simple. There's the web form. You can just go click, 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 add your name to the petition. Petition basically just says open up the environmental review and the community health review process. Wait a minute. And then there's some other suggestions. So what we can do, and we were planning to do, is send this around everybody that's here for this meeting and encourage it to be spread more widely. But I have a question. We feel, those of us who have been working in this group for a while, that one of the most successful things we did was when Dory was leading the charge for the voter registration movement back before the election. And one thing we did was we had a way of kind of keeping track of how much progress we were making. And in that case, we were counting how many phone calls we'd made or communications that we'd done either through texting or letters or phone calls. And we had a goal of a certain number that we were able to count. So I don't know how you all feel about this, but we're interested to know whether you would in fact do some of these things on this checklist, or at least be open to them, and be open to checking them off and sending us back information on what you've done. How many of these things were you able to get to, so that we can count and report on those and feel like we're making some progress. How many of you think you would actually do this? Could I have a show of hands?
And yeah.
Raise hands.
Most all. Well, I can't see all of you, but that's most of you. Okay.
Ken, I was wondering if there were any questions about your last subject, the Peabody Peaker. If anyone had any questions. Charles, looks like you do.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the jurisdiction of the EPA would be in relation to that.
At the national level?
Yeah, well, yeah. Don't they have jurisdiction over the states? Don't they have to get permission from the EPA?
In some cases, I haven't heard the national EPA being mentioned in this project context, but I guess I don't. The true answer is I don't know. But the state certainly does have jurisdiction.
Okay. Any other questions? It seems like this is an urgent one that we kind of need to act quickly. Joy, go ahead.
What about legal action? There should be a lawsuit to enjoin this from going forward.
Right.
So I don't know who's contacted,
Well, I'm going to be in touch with one of the. I went to a couple of the street demonstrations here for this issue, and I've been introduced to the Massachusetts Climate Action Network, and they've been responsible for some of the filings that caused there to be a delay and have a public hearing. There wasn't even going to be that. So I'll bring that up with her and see if I can answer that question. I don't know of anything off the top of my head.
Okay. I saw another hand up. Anyone else? Dory? Yeah, unmute yourself.
Ken, a lot of times with these peaker issues, the pushback is, well, we won't have enough electricity or we won't have enough gas for the cold winter months or some days, some particular days. So just wondering what you have heard is the best answer back to that very expected.
Yeah, the best answer back is that I believe it's again, the MCAN, Massachusetts Climate Action Network, had a study done on what the alternative, I mean, it's a real issue. You know, you have to have enough capacity when you have the peak demand to meet it. And you can see what happens if you don't, like what happened in Texas specifically. So there is a need to have a solution. And what they did is to look at alternatives to more fossil fuel power generation. And I'll provide a link to that report, but the report found that existing battery technology at the utility scale was cheaper and more effective than having another fossil fuel plant. They have a lot of data to show that. So I think that's the right answer. They're better, safer, more environmentally benign alternatives.
Okay. All right,
Cheaper?
so we're hoping, oh, did someone else want to say
Yeah,
something?
I said, was it cheaper too, did you say?
Cheaper,
Awesome.
cheaper. Yeah, I think it was about 2/3 or 3/4 of the cost, according to this report.
I think Breathe Clean North Shore may be an active agent in a lawsuit. Aren't they able to take action like that?
You know, as I say, I know that they and the other organizations involved have been doing everything they can. I haven't
Yeah.
heard of an active
Right.
lawsuit. I know that they've had petitions to the state agencies.
Todd,
but you're
we
right.
see-
I mean, that's got to be one avenue.
Good, thanks, Julie. We have Todd and Stephen. Let's go to Todd.
Cynthia, my architectural firm specified heat pumps for a school about 25 years ago. It's not a new technology.
The heat
They
pumps,
work
yeah.
well, and they're not a big damn deal. And they pay for themselves. Well, probably by now they have. Can you give me a camera too? I want to show you a picture.
That would be Kent.
Let's see.
Has everybody seen the New Yorker for 2 weeks ago?
No,
It's a rather remarkable
Oh,
drawing.
yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I see
It's
that.
so cool.
That's how we feel, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So cool.
Todd, you should be able to share now.
yeah, he
so-
held it up. You could see it. It's,
Oh, is that what you meant?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
You
Good,
know,
all right, thanks. We saw that. It's Don Quixote and the,
Yes.
and the,
Also, Don Quixote tilting against the city's on fire.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Stephen had something to add here.
Just a quick thought. The checklist itself that you guys have created looks fantastic. And I just wonder if we could distribute that tool well beyond us. I mean, get it to your legislators, say this is a tool that we're using. This may be something you want to jump on board with as well. It just looks to me, very actionable and useful.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a work in progress. But absolutely, and right now it exists in a Word document form where you can actively check things, but it can be in a PDF. It won't have that dynamic checkbox, but
Yeah,
that can be easily distributed as widely as we care to distribute it.
let's,
And the
let's
links
let
will
it.
be active. All the links would be active.
Okay, Julie, did you have one last thing to say before we move on to the next
I
topic?
did. I just wanted clarification about the Department of Public Utilities being an agency of the executive, which means only the governor can make change to the DPU behaviors.
I think Dory should answer that one.
The DPU is actually reports to Secretary Theoharidis, but the various people appoint people to the DPU. It's not just the secretary. So it's a quasi-public agency. You know, even though it reports to Secretary Theoharidis, what my colleagues say is that, you know, it kind of just operates in this very autonomous way. There has in the past been legislation to mix up more who's allowed to be appointed to be the commissioner of DPU. So I think there are some governance issues, but strictly speaking, it's Secretary T,
Okay.
who then reports to the governor.
Thanks, Dory. So Kent, are
Yes.
we ready to move on?
Yes.
All
we're
right.
ready to move on. So Cynthia will have the next segment, and unfortunately, I can't see the notes, Cynthia, but I know
It's
what I
okay.
wanted to say about Cynthia in case you
Yes,
didn't get.
he wrote all these little descriptors.
I wrote them, and there are notes on a slide, but I can't share the slide. Anyway. Cynthia has been a longtime member of King's Chapel and had many leadership positions here. She was also executive director of the South Shore part of Habitat for Humanity, and she also holds a master's of, I'm trying to do this from memory now, Cynthia.
Master's of Theological Studies from
Studies.
Weston Jesuit School of Theology.
There you go. So here.
That's why you see all those books in the background? Those are all my texts. I dust them off every now and then. So all of the things we've been talking about here are things that we can do. We can make personal choices to get going and do something at that legislative level where every little vote counts and it will make a difference. We also want to be thinking about what we can do at home, the little personal choices we make in our daily life. Like today, I went to the market to buy a few things for our meal and for Thanksgiving ahead, and it was my goal to come home without any plastic, without any new plastic. I didn't quite make it because I asked for some sliced meat, and before I could tell him to put it in paper, he'd already put it in plastic. But we are done a checklist of sorts, and Kent's going to show us that. And we'd like to ask you, and we have asked some others, what are you doing now in your own personal choices to deal with climate change, to reduce fossil fuels, to reduce your dependence on synthetic chemicals, plastics, and to promote some kind of appreciation and living more sustainably within our natural world. So these three things we are asking: what are you doing now? What do you plan to do? And what would you like to learn more about? And these may be very, very simple little things, but sometimes it's those little things, like when you're standing at the sink and turning on the water, that make you think about the environment. Where does this water come from? I'm so lucky to take a hot shower and have hot shower water, all those things that when I was in Africa, they weren't, doing a habitat trip, they weren't so readily available. So we've asked a few people, and we're going to ask more. If Kent, do you want to go to that next slide?
Sure.
Or yeah, these are just he's pulling some things from and we'd like people to do this and to send them to us at some point. We have one King's Chapel couple this is just to give you ideas, walking, biking, and taking public transportation more often, reducing their water use, turning off the lights. That's one that my husband reminds me of every day, to turn off the lights at night. Simple things like composting, recycling, changing your diet. So that's things you're doing, and each of us probably has a list, and we'd like you to sort of take note, write down what you are doing, and give yourself a pat on the back and say, good on you, and keep going. What do you plan to do? Maybe look at air travel. We were just looking at some trips and looking at the tickets, and now on every air flight, they have a little notation of how much CO2 is used in that air flight, and you can actually choose. I don't know if anyone else has seen that, but it's one of the factors you can consider and get a sense of how much carbon is being used in that air flight. Consider maybe planning to change out your gas stove for electric after hearing all this information about GSEP. Buying an electric car. What do you want to learn more about? We are all learning about this lobbying and petitions and that kind of thing, but we want to hear what else people are thinking of. Another person who is here with us today, Sylvia, is doing all kinds of things. She has become the laundress for her family, her kids and grandchildren. And so she is learning all about saving water, doing laundry, but we can all do that. We all have to do our laundry and changing light bulbs, carrying bags to the store. After Sylvia's encouragement, we successfully took a little plastic container to the second time we've eaten out in a year, and there was more than we could eat in one meal, and we did bring it home and had another whole meal out of it. And we sort of saluted Sylvia as we did that, because she showed us how wonderful that can be. Sylvia, you want to make a comment?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
The reason I interrupt you so rudely is that I've learned with all this laundry, I've been doing laundry since last April for all 5 of us, and it's remarkable how much laundry we generate. But I've learned that if I just put the laundry in the dryer for just a little while and then hang it to dry, I have a drying rack. And you can't, it's difficult. I won't say that it's an easy thing to do, but for some things, it really works better. And you can save all kinds of gas. I have a gas dryer. I'm sorry, but I do. And it uses electricity as well. And so this rack has come in very useful. And if I get more, or a line in the basement, we didn't have dryers when I was a kid, when I was a girl. We didn't have dryers. We hung on the line winter and summer, outside in summer, inside in winter. Just saying. Bye.
Yeah.
I'm done.
I saw a couple of heads nodding there, Sylvia. So I think there's some agreement on that. We have one more. And this is what we're hoping to do: get people from our community giving some suggestions. So when I asked Peter Sexton, what do you think we should be doing? Well, for those of you who know Peter, he came right up. He said, "This is very simple, you guys." So if you have an oil or gas burner, that's not current technology, get it upgraded, and you'll be saving 25 to 30%. Install smart thermostats. Get an energy audit. Weatherproof your house with caulking and insulation. Purchase Energy Star, et cetera, et cetera. And he also says that 2, 3, 4, and 5 have subsidies from your electrical utilities company. So these are just some of the ideas that we have come up with just from putting out the question, and we're going to continue to ask people in our community and congregation what you can do, and hopefully we'll come up with some lists that probably will overlap, but we'll come up with some really good suggestions to carry on in our work, both with our personal choices and then making choices to be part of the bigger movement. Any other thoughts on what we can do? That's the theme of this particular part 3 is what we can all do. So I hope we've come up with some good suggestions. Betsy, you'll have to unmute.
It just came across from the Natural Resources Defense Council advice on which toilet paper to buy, because it makes a big difference, and tissues and paper towels as well. I'll send it to you to post on the website.
That's great. Yeah, good. Thank you. Well, all right.
We are on time. Amazing. Good work, Cynthia. So I have the honor of closing the meeting this time, and I have a very simple message from Bill Mckibben. Probably all of you know who Bill Mckibben is, but he's long-time environmentalist. He's written several books. He had a column in the New Yorker for many years. And Becky heard him speak.
It was fantastic.
Here's what Bill says. If we're going to change, someone is going to have to actually make a change. So that I leave you with after this meeting.
Yeah, good.
Back to.
We
back
thank
to
you. We thank you all for choosing to be here with us at 5:30 and stay till 6:30 and be part of this conversation. It's going to be ongoing through the holidays, of course. We hope that this is part of what we're all thinking about as we gather with families and friends, and we will be thinking about how we can gather together for the Environmental Action Initiative next January, and you will hear about what that will be. Thank you for being here today so much, and many blessings, everyone. Many blessings.